All right, so we read chapter 4 yesterday, and it was talking about the through line. And the important thing that I need you to take away from this chapter is that you have to have something that you really, really, truly believe in, something that's meaningful to you. If you're just talking about something that maybe you got from a different class, you're trying to piggyback on top of research you've done from somewhere else, but you really don't care about it, then the audience is going to understand that. They're going to know that this is just something you're kind of going through the motions with. And the audience is not going to forgive you for any mistakes if that's the case. The audience is all too willing to forgive mistakes. They're all too willing to give you chance after chance if they think that you are giving it your all, if they think you're talking about something that really matters to you. But if you're just getting up there and wasting their time, then they're going to know that. And if they feel like you're wasting their time, they are not going to give you any second chances. They're not going to forgive you for any of those mistakes that we might do as we're presenting. So it's important that you remember that. In this particular chapter, it talks about a couple of different talks. Today, we are going to watch the one by Sir Ken Robinson, talking about if schools kill creativity. I think that this is probably one of my very favorite TED Talks, just because of his use of comedy. And if you've been in my class, then you know that I like to joke around. I like to make you guys laugh. I like to make you giggle, and I like to make it fun. And I think that he really does that also. And so realize that a lot of the times when you guys have been presenting either your letters or even your cave art, it's been kind of rushed. It's been kind of just, let's get through this as quickly as possible. As you watch the video today, though, I want you to notice how Sir Robinson doesn't do that. He takes his time. He, even if he says a joke, he's not afraid to laugh if the audience is laughing. He's not afraid to give them a second for things to sink in. And so you should be the same way whenever you're giving your speech. In regards to the through line, you want to make sure that the through line is not the topic of the sentence or the topic of the speech. The through line is what goes throughout the entirety of the speech that brings it all together. And so, for instance, um, in Sir Robinson's speech, the topic of the speech might be, do schools kill creativity? But the through line is the ways that we can actually make education matter, and the ways that we can actually shape education to better help students with the future that they are going to be finding themselves in. And so while the two might be interconnected, and they should be interconnected, they're not going to be exactly the same thing. In the book, it references a couple of different people. On page 32, it talks about Salman Khan from the Khan Academy. If you have not actually seen that website, it's pretty cool. And so if you're having a problem with any sort of problem, if you're having a problem with any sort of class, then you can go to the Khan Academy, and they have free resources there. So what happened with Khan was he had a cousin in India who was having difficulties, and of course, him being in America couldn't help him, help his cousin. And so what he did was he started to make lessons using a virtual blackboard, and then he uploaded those to his cousin, and it kind of exploded from there. And now millions and millions of people across the world use the Khan Academy for a variety of different subjects. And so it's just a really, really cool, neat thing that has happened in the world of education, and that is talked about specifically in this chapter. One thing that is repetitive throughout the chapter is the notion that you're taking the audience on a journey. And so nobody wants for the tour guide to tell them exactly what's going to happen at the very beginning. We're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and then explain it all in detail. You can give a brief overview. Yeah, we're going to hit the site of the World Trade Center, we're going to go to the Statue of Liberty, and then we're going to go to the Empire State Building. But that's not the time to go in depth about those things. And so you want to make sure that you're not doing that in the opening paragraphs of your speeches, that you're not giving us too much information. You're going to give us a tour. If you're treating this as a journey and you're giving us a tour, then really what you're trying to do is set this expectation and make us want to get to that point, but you're not going to give it away at the very beginning. And so it's kind of like a little bit of mystery is okay. A little bit of making people wonder exactly what you're going to say is okay. So don't just say everything that you want to in that very first paragraph, because that's not the best way to go. Um, On page 35, it talks about the wrong way. And so if you've noticed, sometimes with some of our talks, we want to talk about a whole bunch of different things. And so maybe instead of giving one really good story during the campfire talk, people wanted to talk about 2 or 3 things. And so instead of giving us a really good story, they gave us 2 or 3 really quick snapshots of stories. And it didn't really pull us in. It didn't really let us know anything about them. And so you want to make sure that you don't try to talk about every single thing that you want to talk about, and instead focus in on the most important bits. And so that does involve actually cutting stuff. One of the things that it talks about, and I don't remember what, it's on page 37. It says, economist Nick Marks says, kill your darlings. I had to be prepared to not talk about some things I absolutely love and would have liked to squeeze in, but they were not part of the main narrative. That was tough but essential. And so a lot of writers do this. They're forced to kill characters that they really like. A lot of journalists have to cut really amazing parts of the story that they've worked on because it just doesn't fit into the total narrative that they're trying to get across. And very good speech makers do the exact same thing. And so just because you've put in some work to write a speech doesn't necessarily mean that you have to give everything that you've written. A good part of writing is going to be editing and rewriting. And so you want to make sure that you are, I'm busy right now, I'm sorry, okay. That you're doing that, and you're editing, and that you're rewriting, and that you're cutting the things that don't matter, okay? And so that's very important. And then the little last bit is that you want to make sure that you actually have structure to your speech. And it doesn't have to follow the same structure. On page 40, it gives you kind of like the average structure that you've been used to. So you have the introduction, you have your main points, you have a conclusion. That's perfect for a lot of speeches. But sometimes you're just not going to need that type of structure. It all depends on what type of presentation that you're going to be doing. As we get further and further and you start doing these different types of presentations, then you're going to see that based on the context of the situation, you might not necessarily need that. So for instance, if you are giving a speech at a wedding, you wouldn't have to do that. If you're getting ready to talk about yourself for an interview, of course you're not going to have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. And if you're doing a podcast, you might not even need that either. But a lot of good podcasts do follow that structure where they preview it, they have a really nice body where they're talking about the specific subject that they want to cover, they cover it in depth, and then the conclusion kind of wraps it all together. It's just really up to the individual situation. But what I want you to get across, what I want to get across to you, however, is that it's okay that you don't follow a cookie cutter program. Good speakers don't have to follow what everyone else is doing. It's really about what's best for you. And that again, that's not what's easiest for you. That's not what's the least work for you. It's what's the best for you, what's the best for your topic, what's the best for your speech. So it's important that you do that. And whenever on page 41, when it talks about tough topics, you have to realize that sometimes we're going to be talking about things in some of our speeches, and maybe not even in this class. Maybe if you're talking about something in a history class or in a government class, and you're talking about something real world that's occurring that's hurting people, you want to make sure that you tackle those topics with sensitivity, with empathy, and with compassion. And if you do that, then the audience is going to understand. Even if you have a different point of view, if you're empathetic, if you're sympathetic, if you put yourselves in their shoes, then they're going to be able to see where you're coming from instead of just automatically becoming an enemy against you. I do recommend that you follow the checklist on page 42 whenever you're looking through what kind of topic you're going to be writing about. So is it a topic that you're passionate about? If it's not, boom, it needs to go away. Does it inspire curiosity? So just looking at the topic, does it make you say, oh, I really want to know more about that topic? And if it doesn't, then you might want to ask yourself why you're choosing this topic to talk about. A big one is the third one. Will it make a difference to the audience to have this knowledge? If it doesn't make a difference to the audience, then there's no reason to be talking about it. If you're not making a difference in the lives of the listeners, then there's zero reason why it should be presented to people. I've said it before, I'll say it again. We have a limited amount of time on this planet. And if we don't use that time wisely and in order to help other people, then all we're doing is wasting that time with people. In the time that you're here in this class, you have to listen to all of these different types of speeches. But if you are forced to listen to speeches that don't matter, we're literally wasting minutes of your life that you're never going to get back. So think about that whenever you're choosing your speech. Is my talk a gift or an ask? Again, you need to make it a gift. You are a storyteller. At the end of the day, you are a storyteller that's trying to give this gift of knowledge, of education, of entertainment to your audience. And if it's not a gift from you to them, then you shouldn't be doing it. If you're just doing it to ask the audience to do something for you, then they're going to resent you, they're not going to like it, and it's not going to get your point across. Is the information fresh, or is it already out there? So this is interesting, because if it's fresh, then it doesn't really matter how you present it, because no one's heard of it before, right? Of course, you need to follow all the structures and whatnot, but if it's something that's brand new, then it's going to be interesting regardless. If it's not fresh, if it's something we've already heard about, then you have to repackage it in a fresh and innovative way so that we want to hear about it. Can I truly explain the topic in the time slot allocated, complete with necessary examples? Again, this goes back to the point of, are you going to be able to talk about the through line in the time that you're given for the speech thoroughly? And if not, then you need to cut the topic. You need to go to something else. Because just because you like it, just because you've answered yes to everything before then, if you don't have enough time to cover it, then you're just going to leave the audience wanting more, and not in a good way, as in you have not fulfilled your job as the speaker. And that's not something that we want to look at. Do I know enough about this to make a talk worth the audience's time? Again, we know if someone is proficient in the topic that they're talking about. You don't have to be an expert, but are you at least proficient in the knowledge that you're presenting? And if you're not, then it's going to be a problem as well. So it doesn't need to be something that you just kind of heard about and you want to talk about. It needs to be something that you have a firm grasp on so that you're giving the talk to the audience. Do I have credibility to take on this topic? This is a really, really big one. We have a really, really hard time listening to someone that we know like has a problem with drugs right now, not in the past, but right now has a problem with drugs, telling us not to do drugs. We have a problem knowing that someone has cheated in school or cheated in their relationships, and then they're telling us not to cheat. Credibility is one of the best things that you have, and so you are not going to get up and tell the class a speech about, oh, this is how you make good grades, if you and everyone else knows that your grades aren't necessarily the best, right? Because you don't have credibility. So you need to find something that you have credibility on. What if something, if you were talking about, they're like, oh yeah, that person, they know about softball, they know about playing the trombone, they know about this, they know about that. If you have credibility on it, people are going to want to listen to you. And then, the rest, the 15 words, if you can't encapsulate it in 15 words, that's fine. But really the question is can you articulate a through line for your speech? Can you tell us what's the point? What's the point that holds the introduction, the three main points, and the conclusion together? If you can do that, then it's fine. It doesn't necessarily have to be 15 words, but you do need to be able to tell yourself what's the point of this speech. So at the end of the day, Chapter 4 is probably one of the most important chapters that we've read so far, because it's really getting into the nitty-gritty, the details on how to give a speech. If you have any questions, make sure that you put them in the stream in Google Classroom, or you can email me. Y'all have a great day.